Before modern toilets, your city was your toilet. The streets, the rivers, the ground beneath your feet, all of it. And then, in the 1800s, London invented something that looked like a miracle. The flush toilet. You pulled a handle, the bowl cleared, the smell vanished, and the waste disappeared. Except it didn't disappear. It went into the Thames, the same river people drank from, the same river beside Parliament, the same river running through the heart of the most powerful city on earth. And by the summer of 1858, the smell became so unbearable that Parliament nearly stopped functioning. Not because of war, not because of famine, but because London was drowning in its own waste. And the worst part is, the smell was not even the real danger. It was only the warning, because hidden inside that water was something that could kill a healthy person in hours. Cholera. Today, you probably use a toilet 5 or 6 times a day. You don't think about it. You don't have to. You sit down, you flush, and whatever was there is gone, as if it never existed. But for most of human history, getting rid of human waste was one of the most dangerous problems a city could face. Because before modern sewage systems, waste stayed close, under homes, in alleys, in gutters, in rivers, in drinking water, and eventually, inside people's bodies. For centuries, many homes relied on something called a cesspit, a hole dug into the ground beneath or near the house, crude, dark, often unlined, and constantly filling up. Everything went into it. Human waste, kitchen scraps, dirty water, rotting scraps, anything people wanted out of sight. But out of sight did not mean gone. And when the cesspit filled up, someone had to empty it. That job fell to men known as gong farmers. They worked at night, often because the job was considered too disgusting for daylight. They climbed down into the pits by hand, scooped out the waste, loaded it into barrels, and carried it away before morning. They were paid well, better than many ordinary workers. But there was a reason. Inside those pits, deadly gases could build up. Methane, hydrogen sulfide, air so toxic a man could collapse before he understood what was happening. One wrong breath, one slip, one moment too long underground, and he might never come back up. The city needed these men, but it also tried not to look at them, because they handled the one thing everyone produced, and nobody wanted to admit existed. But the cesspits were only the beginning. The real disaster came when cities grew too large. In the 1700s and 1800s, urban populations exploded. More people packed into tighter streets, more homes, more waste, more cesspits. And eventually, the ground could not absorb it all. Waste seeped out into soil, into cellars, into alleys, into gutters. And then, into the water supply, the same water people used for drinking, washing, cooking, making food. A city did not need an enemy army to poison it. It was already poisoning itself. And it wasn't only underground. In old European cities, people often emptied chamber pots straight into the street. A person would open a window, shout a warning, and throw the contents onto the pavement below. In Edinburgh, the warning was often said to be, "Gardez-l'eau," a rough version of the French phrase. Gardez-l'eau, watch out for the water. Except it was not water, and anyone standing below knew exactly what was coming. This was not some rare accident. This was daily urban life. A city was trade. Money, churches, markets, crowds, animals, mud, blood, rotting food, human waste, all mixing together beneath people's feet. London, Paris, Rome. These were not clean stone cities like paintings make them look. They were crowded human machines, with no real way to remove what humans left behind. And then something arrived that seemed to change everything. The flush toilet. For wealthy families in London, it looked like the future. It was clean, modern, private, civilized. A person could use one pull a handle. And the waste vanished. No chamber pot, no cesspit smell, no servant carrying it away, no evidence left behind. Inside the home, it felt like a revolution. And in one way, it was. The flush toilet changed the relationship between people and their own waste. For the first time, filth could disappear instantly. But there was one question almost nobody wanted to ask. Where did it go? The answer was the Thames. The flush toilet did not destroy the waste. It moved it straight into the river that ran through London, the same river that supplied drinking water to huge parts of the city. The same river where people washed, the same river beside Parliament. The toilet worked. That is what makes this so disturbing. It did exactly what people wanted it to do. It removed waste from the home. But because London had no proper sewage system, it moved the danger from private rooms into public water. A cleaner house meant a deadlier city. And for years, London kept flushing. More toilets, more drains, more pipes, more waste, all feeding into the same river. At first, people thought the main problem was smell. The dominant belief at the time was called miasma theory, the idea that disease spread through bad air, foul smells, invisible poisonous vapors rising from rotting matter. And at first, it seemed logical. The smell was everywhere. The sickness was everywhere. The poorest districts smelled the worst, and the poorest districts suffered terribly. So people connected the two. Bad smell meant bad air. Bad air meant disease. And if smell was the enemy, then the solution seemed obvious. Move the filth away, flush it out, clear the drains, push the smell somewhere else. But in London, somewhere else often meant the Thames, the very water people were drinking. So the city tried to clean the air and made the water more dangerous. Then came the disease. Cholera. Cholera does not kill gently. A person can seem healthy in the morning, and by evening be losing fluid faster than the body can replace it. The skin can turn gray, the eyes sink, the face collapses, the lips turn blue, the body weakens with terrifying speed. And in severe cases, death can come within hours. London had already suffered major cholera outbreaks. Thousands died in the early 1830s, many thousands more in the late 1840s, then again in the 1850s. Wave after wave, family after family, street after street. And for a long time, almost nobody understood why. But one man saw the pattern more clearly. His name was John Snow. He was a physician. And in 1854, during a cholera outbreak in Soho, Snow noticed something others had missed. The deaths were not random. They clustered around a specific water source, the Broad Street pump. So he mapped the cases, house by house, street by street. Death by death? And the pattern pointed back to the water. People who drank from the pump were getting sick. People who avoided it were often spared. There was even a nearby brewery where many workers drank beer instead of pump water, and they were largely spared from the outbreak. To John Snow, the conclusion was clear. Cholera was not spreading mainly through the air. It was spreading through contaminated water. But Snow was not immediately celebrated. He was doubted, dismissed, resisted. The miasma theory was too deeply embedded. Too many officials believed smell was the cause. Too many experts were already committed to the wrong explanation. And John Snow, the man who had identified one of the most important truths in public health history, died in 1858. The same year London's waste finally became impossible to ignore. That summer, everything came together. The heat, the low river, the sewage, the overcrowding, the smell. The Thames was already overloaded with human waste. But as temperatures rose, the river level dropped, and as the water receded, it exposed what had been collecting along the banks. Thick layers of sewage, mud, rotting organic matter, human waste. Under the summer sun, it began to bake. The smell rose from the Thames and rolled across the city. It entered homes, businesses, government buildings. It clung to the air. People reported feeling sick just walking near the river. Shops emptied. Businesses suffered. Anyone with enough money to leave the city left. But the most important building affected was Parliament, because Parliament sat directly beside the Thames. The politicians could smell the river from inside the building. Curtains were soaked in chloride of lime in a desperate attempt to block the stench. It did not work. The men who governed the British Empire, the lords, the ministers, the lawmakers, were trapped beside a river that smelled like death. And suddenly, the problem poor Londoners had lived with for years became an emergency. Not because the suffering was new, not because the science had suddenly convinced everyone, not because cholera deaths alone had been enough, but because the smell had finally reached the people with power. And once the people in power could no longer escape it, action became urgent. Emergency legislation was pushed through. Money was approved. Plans were accepted. Excuses disappeared. For decades, London had lived with contaminated water. For decades, people had died in outbreaks. For decades, the city had delayed. But when the stench entered the rooms where decisions were made, the impossible suddenly became possible. London would build one of the greatest sewer systems the world had ever seen. The man given the task was Joseph Bazalgette, a civil engineer, and what he designed was extraordinary. He did not try to perfume the city. He did not try to hide the river. He did not try to patch the old system. He reimagined London beneath the ground. Bazalgette designed a massive network of sewers, intercepting drains, pumping stations, and main tunnels, all built to carry waste away from central London, away from homes, away from crowded streets, away from drinking water. The system included over 1,000 miles of smaller sewers, feeding into major tunnels that redirected sewage downstream. The scale was enormous. The engineering had to be precise. The tunnels had to slope correctly. The flow had to keep moving. Too flat, and the sewage would sit. Too steep, and the system could fail. Bazalgette had to build for the London that existed, and the London that was coming. So he built the system larger than the city needed at the time. That decision mattered because London kept growing, and beneath it, the tunnels kept working. By the mid-1860s, large parts of London were connected to the new sewer system. And then, something happened. Cholera began to lose its grip on the city. There was one final major outbreak in 1866, but it struck hardest in an area of East London that had not yet been fully connected to Bazalgette's system. That detail changed everything, because now the evidence was almost impossible to ignore. Where the sewer system protected the water, cholera faded. Where the old contamination remained, cholera returned. The truth became undeniable. It was not the smell. It had never been the smell. The smell was horrifying, but the water was deadly. For years, London had been fighting the wrong enemy, and the solution did not come from perfume, or soaked curtains, or pretending the waste was gone. It came from separating sewage from people before it could enter their bodies. Bazalgette sewers still run beneath London today, a modern city of millions, still partly relying on tunnels designed in the Victorian era. That alone tells you how massive the achievement was. Roads changed, buildings changed, empires changed, but beneath the city, the tunnels kept working. And that is the strange genius of modern sanitation. When it works, it becomes invisible. You flush a toilet, the bowl clears, the smell vanishes, and your day continues. You never see the tunnel. You never see the pumping station. You never think about the engineers, the workers, the pipes, the gradients, the treatment plants, or the history beneath your feet. But behind that flush is a history of death. Cities choking on their own waste, rivers turned into sewers, families destroyed by contaminated water, scientists defending the wrong theory, a doctor who saw the truth and was ignored, and an engineer who helped save a city by building the one thing everyone needed, but almost nobody wanted to think about. The toilet didn't just change how people lived, it changed how long people lived. Because the difference between a deadly city and a modern one was not just medicine. It was infrastructure, pipes, tunnels, flow, distance, the hidden machinery of public health. For most of history, the danger was not that waste existed. The danger was that it stayed too close. Close to homes, close to streets, close to wells, close to rivers, close to the water people swallowed. So the next time you flush, remember this. There was a time when the street was the toilet, the river was the sewer, and one glass of water could kill you. And if you want to see what else we take for granted, that used to be deadly, subscribe, because the next one is going to surprise you.